Hey everyone, it's Friday. Thank you for joining us. It's Chat with Mac. It's the end of the week, end of a normal week after the week we had prior. So thank you for joining us. And for everyone that's new, we're glad to have you. Nadeem, how's it going, sir?
Oh, it's going great. Just been a busy week. I think what happened is a lot of people, everything got to a standstill, and then with the freeze and everything,
Yeah.
and now all of a sudden people are kind of scrambling to, hey, we're not prepared. What are we going to do if it happens
Yeah.
again?
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so a lot of what I've been working with customers on is customers are reassessing their contracts with their providers. They're making changes there. They're moving systems up into the cloud. They're wanting to, and these are customers who I would never have thought that they would even consider moving stuff to the cloud.
Yep.
They're calling us and saying, hey, how long of a process is it, and how quickly can you get us there? And it's like, guys, wait a minute, put the brakes on. We gotta reevaluate. There are customers that we haven't touched their network in, like months, and they're all of a sudden asking us, we want to move to the cloud. It's like, oh, wait a minute, we need to do an assessment. There's a lot of things that we need to make sure we plan for. It's not just like we can just lift and shift you. Now, when I say we can't just lift and shift you, a lot of the individual workloads, yes, we can just lift and shift them. So if you have a server, it's one server, it does something specific, we can lift it as it is from the on-prem setup and move it into the cloud as it is. But the problem is a lot of times multiple systems are working with each other, and that's what we need to be careful about, is not lift something that something else depends on. And now all of a sudden, since the IP changes, now something else breaks. And that's what I'm trying to kind of make people understand is it's we can lift and shift it, but you don't want to just blindly lift and shift something when there might be other dependencies that are left on prem, and all of a sudden it's almost like you have a building and you removed a structural element from the bottom and you're expecting the whole building to stay on top of it.
Right. Well, now, it's funny you should talk about this, because earlier today I saw something, in regards to something Microsoft is doing within the cloud, and it's as if, I was under the impression there's one cloud. It seems like there are multiple layers, within cloud, the cloud infrastructure. Maybe you can kind of help people understand, like, sure, there's a cloud, but then there's other elements, within the cloud that we just don't know about. We just know this cloud, but we don't know that there's so many different aspects to it.
So this is a complex topic with a lot of intricacies, so I'm going to try to keep it as general as I can. What a lot of people have probably heard about is majorly three types of clouds, right? So there is the public cloud, which pretty much everybody equates it to. When they say cloud, they mean public cloud. That's what everybody means, right? Mm-hmm. Then there is the private cloud. Private cloud in the SMB space, it's kind of hard to find, because most companies in the SMB space, they'd rather carve out their own section in the public cloud. Why? Because it's much more cost effective to use part of the public cloud as your own cloud. Now, the private cloud comes into play when companies like, so there's a pretty large company that we maintain, and we set up a private cloud for them. And it's basically, when you sign up for the cloud with Microsoft, it's kind of like that, but it's your own. It's not available to anybody else. It's your own. You maintain it, you run it. Now, in the instance, the example that I gave you, one of our customers, so they actually have multiple departments. So they actually reverse bill it to their department. So it's a private cloud for the enterprise, but then it's public because it's interdepartmental. And whichever department uses whichever portion of that cloud, they actually, pay the IT department for the use that they do. So it's kind of like, think of it like the Azure cloud, but it's your own. And instead of paying Microsoft, you're paying your IT department. So that's the private cloud for
Interesting.
them, right? Now, some companies have what's called a hybrid cloud. So they have their on-prem systems, which, the historic traditional on-prem systems, like, physical stuff you can touch. Then they have the hybrid cloud, where there's some systems, in their own cloud, some systems in the public cloud, and then they have their private cloud, where there's just stuff in the private cloud. Now, those it's all based on requirements, right? If there's a company that has, let's say, a branch that deals with confidential information, and maybe there is a mandate or requirement to keep that private, then yeah, you'll keep that in the private cloud. You won't put it in the public cloud. So far, pretty much most mandates and requirements that come down, from via regulation, you can more than achieve all of that in the public cloud. So it comes down to more of a company-wide policy as opposed to a regulation from the government. That's what it comes down to. So as a company, a decision was made that, hey, certain systems we're only going to keep in the private cloud. Then that's done. And that's why they'll maintain that private cloud. And since they are going to maintain that private cloud, it only makes sense to carve out a piece of it for this department, that department, so you can kind of distribute some of those costs. Think of it this way. Think of it like Amazon, the first company that started the cloud. How did it happen? They had their own private cloud, their private systems that they were using internally. And some genius thought, oh, well, we have excess compute capacity. Why don't we just resell it? We sell everything else. Might as well. And it just took off from there. And the world just changed, Yeah. So now, I get asked this question. It's like, hey, Nadeem, whenever we talk, you don't talk a lot about AWS, the Amazon's cloud, but you talk a lot about Azure. And I almost rarely talk about the Google cloud, because let's just not talk about it. It's not even there. It's not even a fraction of the big boys, right?
Yeah.
So the main competitors are the Azure cloud from Microsoft and AWS from Amazon. Of course, the giant is Amazon because they started it. So a lot of companies who built their infrastructure in AWS, they're now kind of stuck in it because everything is built already. They don't want to move out. There's even customers like we deal with, they're small companies, but they've already invested and built their infrastructure in AWS, and they don't want to retool it. The pain has to be quite a lot for them to move out of that,
Yeah.
Now, most of our customers who have some sort of implementation in AWS, they have some components in Azure anyway, because I think it makes sense to distribute, basically not put all your eggs in one basket. Right, it just makes sense. So for that reason, they have different systems in different clouds. Now, our infrastructure. So PCSN's infrastructure is in the Azure cloud, and there's a few reasons for that. The main reason is back when AWS first started. Well, actually, when AWS first started, we had systems in AWS, so we had. And we do this, for testing. I mean, we have systems in the Google Cloud too, which it's not even worth talking about, but we just do it for testing, for prototyping and things like that. So we had systems in AWS, and we were collecting some metrics. Because back when AWS first came out, a lot of times what companies were doing was they were virtualizing their systems and then oversubscribing them. So they were, like if one server can stand at, let's say, it has, let's say, for example, 8 gigs of RAM. Well, they're oversubscribing it to where they're actually using 10 gigs of RAM, and the system is just swapping it out to the drive. So they were kind of oversubscribing it. So we got some good metrics around AWS where we were thinking, hey, are they oversubscribing it? And because they can, right? I mean, a tenant within a VM is not going to know if the host is oversubscribed. The only way they can know is based on performance metrics. So we ran some metrics, and we noticed something interesting, which was that at certain times of the day, the same workload would kind of slow down and become sluggish. And we can actually see this in the metrics. We can see the CPU kind of being limited somehow. We didn't know exactly how, because that was controlled by the hypervisor, which was controlled by Amazon. We didn't have access to that, right? But we can see that performance was degraded at certain points in time. And over time, we kind of noticed there was a trend that the slowness happened at certain times. And then we kind of started to correlate that with, it was times when there was either a login storm, or there was times when it was doing peak load. So, in the morning when people start coming into the office and they start logging in, things slowed down. And then in the middle of the day, it picked back up. So then along came the Azure cloud. And at this point, we didn't have experience. This is when they first started out. So we started prototyping just like we do. And something interesting came about, that we did not notice those sluggish times on the Azure side, which we noticed on the AWS side. So now, we were thinking, okay, well, maybe because Azure is new and they're not oversubscribing yet, it's just a matter of time till they start oversubscribing. But we moved some production workloads into Azure just because it was better performance. So we were paying the same amount, we were getting the same resources, but it was better performance. So in other words, we were paying less, getting more. So it was like, why wouldn't we do that, right? So then we moved some production workloads into the Azure cloud, and we keep monitoring these two metrics, in both of these clouds. We have yet to see that the Azure cloud slow down like the AWS cloud, where it kind of goes in cycles, where you can pretty much tell, okay, it's about 8 o'clock, things are going to slow down a bit, get ready. But we don't notice that in the Azure side of things. So it almost seems like in the Azure side, we have more resources available, where we're not hitting that peak and things slowing down. It's not oversubscribed. It's not subscribed as much as Azure is, which makes sense because pretty much when somebody says cloud, people think AWS. People don't automatically think Azure. So far we have yet to see that the slowness that we see in AWS on the Azure side. Now, then along with that, certain other things happen. So we work very closely with Microsoft. I mean, I go down to their offices here, and I meet with a lot of people over there. So we kind of get an insight into what Microsoft is thinking, what they're doing, what the future holds, as it comes down from Microsoft. So one of the things that we found out was that, and people have probably heard me say that, Microsoft's worldwide cloud investment is more than Amazon and Google combined. So that's a lot to say there, right? So that means, their investment they're all in on the cloud. You've probably heard that term. They are all in on that cloud. It's cloud or bust. They, so once they started investing it, they were so focused on it, they started retooling some of their existing apps. So they're retooling them for the cloud. Let me give you an example. So back in the day, when people used to deploy their own Exchange servers, and customers used to come to us and say, hey, well, we're running our own Exchange server, can't we just sell part of it to somebody else and get paid for it? And we're like, yeah, you can do that. The problem is Exchange is not multi-tenant capable. So to make it multi-tenant capable and make sure that one tenant cannot see the other tenant, you have to do a lot of work. Is it practical to do that work? It wasn't. It didn't make sense. Now, there are some ISPs out there who did the same thing. They would take Exchange server, they would install it on their server, then they would sell parts of it to different customers. The problem is they cannot allow their customers admin access to these Exchange servers, because if they did, then every tenant will be able to see what every other tenant is doing and have access to their mailboxes. And there will be no such thing as privacy at all.
Privacy, yeah.
Yeah. But what these ISPs were really doing was they were using a non-multi-tenant app and not giving away control to where they were trying to make it look like a multi-tenant app. So if somebody needed to add users, they would be like, oh, you got to create a ticket. We'll add the users. You can't add the users. Well, why not? Because we can't give you admin access. Because if we do, you have access to everything and every other company on that server. We're not going to let you do that. Now, Microsoft retooled Exchange for the cloud to where it's truly multi-tenant aware. It's multi-tenant app now. So you cannot buy that version of Exchange that's in, that's the Office 365 or the Microsoft 365 cloud. You cannot get that. The SharePoint, Exchange, every other app that's built on these core technologies, like Lists, OneDrive, they're all built around either Exchange or SharePoint. Those are two main core technologies. So every other app is built on these, and now these core apps are multi-tenant capable. You cannot buy these and deploy them internally. What does that mean? That means that we as admins have the same type of access to the back end of Office 365 for us, for our clients, that we would if we were maintaining the server ourselves. So we can connect to these servers using a command line PowerShell. We can run commands on these servers. We can federate the AD that's maintaining the user accounts for a tenant to a third-party app, right? We can federate. What that means is that you authenticate with a third-party system, and Office 365 just trusts that system, so you don't have to authenticate again. So you log in once and done. And that's basically what Passly is, right?
Yep.
And that's how Passly gets implemented. So when you deploy Passly and you federate it with Office 365, you just log into Passly. Office 365 trusts Passly, and that's how we bring that fancy multi-factor authentication, just-in-time access, and all this.
So stuff. Convenient, by the way. I love Passly. Love it.
So that's that's what happened. That's how it kind of grew over time. Now, Microsoft is taking it a step further. A lot of companies, a lot of customers, and people out there don't know this, but there are multiple levels of the Azure cloud. There is a Azure cloud that is dedicated for federal government. There is an Azure cloud that's dedicated for commercial use. Yep. So there are several levels of the Azure cloud. Now, the second step that Microsoft is taking is, just like they retooled Exchange to be multi-tenant capable, they're retooling most of their apps to be cloud apps. For example, Dynamics. Dynamics is a beast. Now, I don't know if you recall, but Dynamics AX is Exapta. It used to be Exapta that Microsoft bought years ago. They purchased this company. Navision used to be another one that Microsoft purchased a long time ago. Great Plains is another one that Microsoft purchased a long time ago. Now, Dynamics GP is actually Great Plains that has been retooled to run in the cloud. So it gives you the best of both worlds. You pay what you use, but yet you still get admin access to the backend. So you can do what you want to do just like you would on your on-prem system, but yet it's cloud-based, and you only pay for, per the number of users you want to run, or the amount of views that you're getting out of it. You pay based on that. So it's usage-based, as opposed to having to have a bunch of servers, deploy your Great Plains on those servers. Well, first you'll have to install Windows, then you'll have to install SQL, then you'll have to create a SQL farm probably for resiliency, then you'll have to install Great Plains. I mean, a lot of work. Yeah. Now all you do is you just sign up for Dynamics GP, you just sign up for Dynamics. How many licenses do you want? 5? Who would have thought that you could purchase licenses just for 5 users for Great Plains, like even 10 years ago? It wasn't possible. Well, now you can get just 1 license if you wanted to, without having to worry about all these servers, the SQL farms, the resiliency. It's all built in, and Microsoft maintains it for you. But
Mm,
you still get backend access, admin access to the resources, so you get full access to whatever you want to do. So those are at a high level different types of clouds. Most of our customers are going to be working with the commercial cloud, which a lot of the small businesses use, and a lot of our customers are actually in a hybrid environment. They're a hybrid because they'll want to keep they have a bunch of servers that they used to have on prem. They don't want to just throw them away, but they want to still move to the cloud. So they move to the cloud, they migrate to the cloud, and then they keep using those old servers that they had for maybe storage or something you know
is there even an? I mean, I guess my question with that is, I mean, I get you bought, some servers and blah blah blah, but is that even necessary to have the hybrid model? Is there a reason why it would make sense to stay in a hybrid model? I guess is the question I have, as opposed to just being totally in the cloud. Because to me, it just doesn't make sense, to have something on prem and still take, well, I'm going to put some of this in there, and where you can just have everything in the cloud.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So there are pros and cons to either situation, right? So if you were not going to have any servers on prem, then I would say whatever money you were going to spend on maintaining the one or two servers on prem, spend that money to get direct access to your cloud provider. So instead of putting that money in one basket, you're putting it in a different basket. Now you have a high speed dedicated connection going to your cloud provider, which would be ideal. However, the monthly recurring cost from companies like Comcast and AT&T it sometimes boggles the mind. So keeping that in mind, what we do is if a customer has some old servers, old hardware that they want to reprovision in some capacity, we will create a replica of their, let's say, for example, their directory server. So now they have their directory server, which is local to their premises, local to their office, and 8 o'clock when people start logging in, they don't have to authenticate with the cloud. They're authenticating locally. So that authentication now happens pretty fast because it's all local. Yet that local server is synchronizing with the cloud. Right. So now all of a sudden we've reduced that traffic where every user that logs in, they have to first authenticate with the cloud. Now they don't need to do that. They just authenticate locally, and that local DC is replicated with the cloud. So it reduces a lot of the bandwidth usage that you'll see if you didn't have any local servers. However, ideally, you would want to get rid of that local server because that is one additional machine that you have to maintain.
Yeah.
I mean, those machines, I mean, they have redundant hard drives, redundant power supplies. They're using a lot of power. They need backup power. That's what we notice in this freeze that happened. Some companies are feeling those repercussions even today because they're saying, oh, hey, we're having trouble accessing so-and-so. Well, yeah, it's because that old server that you wanted to keep on site, it's not running anymore because, when the power went out, something, either the RAID controller or a few drives died in that server, and that server's offline. So now we got to create some routes, play our magic with some routing to allow people to be able to log in and authenticate directly with the cloud as opposed to their machine looking for that local server that's not there anymore. So yeah, ideally we would want to move everything to the cloud, just get rid of the local resources, but sometimes that's not practical. Sometimes there is some traditional baggage that customers come with, and that baggage is more in the mind as opposed to anywhere else. For example, like I think maybe a year and a half ago, we were having a lot of conversations with customers where we wanted to move them to the cloud, and they were like, it's not going to happen, not while I'm alive, because I want to be able to touch my machine. What do you mean the cloud? Where is it? We don't own it. I don't even know if it exists. It doesn't exist. So, I mean, it was just fear of that unknown.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the trend to where, I mean, gosh, I don't even recall the last time. I don't think it's happened recently when somebody made that statement that I want to have physical servers that I can touch. Now we're having more and more conversations where customers are coming to us and say, hey, Nadeem, remember you talked to me, a few months ago about this cloud system where we won't have to have any hardware and we won't have to maintain any hardware? How soon can we do that?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden it's an emergency, right?
Right. And you know something that you used to say all the time, Nadeem, it takes pain for some people to realize when there's something needed.
Exactly. And I'm gonna steal a very good example that I would name names, but nobody outside the IT world would know her, so I'm not gonna say her name. But anyway, so a good business colleague said it very well, and she said it this way. Think of it this way: you have a guy who mows your lawn, and every now and then the guy leaves the gate open, and your dogs get out in the street, and that's pain, right?
Yeah.
It's pain. Now there's another yard guy who puts his brochures on your gate, and it's that guy who puts the brochures on your gate that he has this excellent lawn service. He calls you every now and then. Hey, ma'am, I'll be in your neighborhood. You want me to do your yard while I'm there? Or hey, we take care of stuff. I do stuff like I do my own. I take care of the details. And it's like, you're not gonna even pay attention to this new guy unless your dog goes out in the street, gets hit by a truck and dies, and now that's real pain.
Yeah.
Now you're going to call this guy and say, hey, remember we talked about this? You said you take care of it like your own? Give me a quote. How much is it going to be? And now, even if it's going to be $100 more, you're like, do it.
Yeah.
That other guy's gone because
Yeah.
he left that gate open too many times. Finally, your dog got out and got hit by a truck.
Yeah.
And that's a good example of that pain needs to get to a certain threshold before you make that decision.
Yeah.
So you're probably hearing those dings. That's text messages going off of somebody needs me.
Yeah, we better cut this down.
But yeah, I mean, so it's we want to keep these short. We don't want to bore people with too much stuff. But I think we've had it. This one's been going on for like 30 minutes, so that's perfect timing.
That's perfect. Yep.
So I hope you understand a little bit about the cloud. Where I gave you a little history, and why I always recommend the Azure cloud. It's because the company's investment is just huge in this, and it's everybody on deck trying to get it done. So that's it's like nobody else is going all in the cloud like Microsoft is. Well, when I say nobody else, the only competitor is Amazon. I mean,
Amazon,
Google's
right.
not a competitor. I mean, Google tried. Now I got to give it to them. They tried. They hired Green. She's the founder of VMware. They hired her. They thought she was going to do some magic thing. I don't think it's magic is what they need. I think it's the company culture that needs to change.
That needs to change. No, that's true.
But anyway, Mac, it's always fun and interesting to talk to you. I get excited about stuff, and every now and then you can kind of pull me back in.
That's good. It's good.
So everybody have a great day and be safe out there, and you do the same, Mac.
You too, sir. Everybody have a good one.